So you have some thoughts on the new Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 campaign. I do too. Specifically about the ending that has thrown the Call of Duty fandom into crisis all over again. Hey everyone, my name's Abby and I'm an MFA grad who's been studying and crafting creative writing formally for 7 years, and I've studied game writing in my spare time. I'm really passionate about storytelling in video games, and as someone who grew up with the original Modern Warfare trilogy, I just had to talk about this recent installment in the reboot. Before we start, this is your big spoiler warning, so if you want to remain spoiler-free for now, click off this video and just bookmark it for later. No doubt you will have some thoughts and feelings when you come back. So now that the game has officially been released, we can talk about the narrative, specifically scene choreography and plot tension surrounding, big spoiler, Soap's death, and a sense or lack thereof of audience satisfaction and narrative closure. I'm not here to bash the experience and work of longtime Call of Duty affiliates like Brian Bloom and the rest of the experienced writing team. It's important to note that game writing often comes second, if not third, fourth, and so on to gameplay mechanics. And specifically that game writers have the challenge of molding a narrative to fit the technical, temporal, and financial parameters of a video game's development. And while I don't know the specific prioritization of game elements in Modern Warfare, I do believe that the writers are purposeful in their narrative structure and skilled in characterization a lot of the time. It's just that in Modern Warfare 3, their work doesn't seem to be at its strongest as we've seen in the reboot so far. Now, I'm not going to rehash arguments about how Soap needed more character development or needed a more grandiose death. I personally like to give the reboot more grace and space to exist separate from the original trilogy. And in the first two games, the opportunity for creative liberty seemed to be taken advantage of by the writing team and the narrative director. Soap's characterization and development aren't required to pay tribute to the trilogy, and the writers made a creative decision to have him end as a sergeant and not a captain, and also to go out in a subdued and immediate manner. These are not inherent wrongs when diverging from the original games. While I was also saddened by Soap's departure from the series once again, I understand that the writers are creating a different story, although I will qualify later that the writers fall into the trap of flying a little too close to the sun that is the source material. In my opinion, the problem isn't Soap's death itself, but everything else around it. This is where we get to conversations about scene choreography, specifically character movement and point of view, as well as plot tension, specifically the ability to sustain it as long as possible. In the Modern Warfare 2 Alone mission, the choreography direction of Soap's linear movement gameplay-wise combined with the plot tension of not knowing Soap and Ghost's fate works very effectively together. The writers take advantage of players' expectations from the original trilogy that it might be time to get rid of some characters, but they subvert this expectation by having Soap and Ghost survive. In Modern Warfare 3, the open combat missions don't lend themselves to the same dynamic, and many of the character pairings and dialogue did not lead to a strong structural narrative to get players to that final ending and mission. And most importantly, the writers no longer have the advantage of subverting expectations. It's the third game, and for the past year, people have been expecting that someone is going to die. And the writers could have continued subverting this expectation, but they chose not to, which isn't where everything started to get funky. It gets funky with Soap's death. So sad and frustrating, I know. But again, maybe not for the reasons you might think, such as it being too soon or not being flashy enough. We already have that death for Soap in the original Modern Warfare 3. The new Modern Warfare 3 struggles with Soap's death because it doesn't capitalize on the narrative structures from Modern Warfare 2019 and Modern Warfare 2 2022. So let's break that down in detail now. So I've thrown together some rough alternate scene choreos in Twine and created some really janky, unofficial screenplay formats for the prospective ending cutscenes to match. Instead of proposing entire level design changes or introducing new gameplay mechanics, what could have been some realistic suggestions to strengthen the emotional and narrative impact of Soap's death? Suggestion 1. Experiment with POV by switching Price out with Ghost, or even switching to Soap's POV for the final mission. Take a look now at these branching paths in Twine, and feel free to pause the video at any point to orient yourself. So here are the scene setup conditions, with the italicized options being the actual Modern Warfare 3 scene choreo that we got. This path marked with the red line is what we get in-game. We're in Price's POV, and Soap dies immediately, and Price focuses on defusing the bomb while Soap dies out of focus. Here's a further breakdown of that original scene with notes on where the camera and thus the player are meant to focus, as well as what the final gameplay prompt is. Now let's take a look at what happens when we go down the branch with Ghost and Soap and in Ghost's POV, marked by the blue line. If Soap still dies immediately, Ghost still is the one to check on Soap, and players will have Soap in focus even if he's a corpse at that point. Players don't just cut a wire, but have to dread checking on a likable character that they know is gone. And guess what? Let's make it more emotional by having the final prompt say check on Johnny instead of check on Soap. Because it's Ghost, and only Ghost would see the prompt that way. The writers have built it up well enough that I feel weird calling Soap Johnny, even if he's not a real person. It's a little detail, but it meshes characterization, gameplay, and narrative in a single POV change without shifting the entire scene choreo. But wait, it can get even more emotional. Feel free to pause here to review the messy and questionably formatted screenplay of this alternate cutscene. We have the instructions that Soap would give Ghost in-game, and then we cut to when Ghost must relay the instructions to Price in a cutscene. Guess what time it is? Nuanced dialogue time. Ghost says together in response to how Price and Gaz are meant to defuse the bomb, but have the first-person camera panned onto Soap's body when Ghost says it. Then have him clarify the instructions to cut the wires together. Now you have a higher likelihood that players are getting their heart and their brain strings all twisted up, acknowledging the fact that there is not going to be a together anymore for the 141, and specifically the Ghost-Soap powered duo. But it's not too melodramatic and sentimental for an SAS soldier like Ghost, who may have actually just been clarifying the instructions for Price. Spoiler, Ghost was grieving for that moment before compartmentalizing. But it's ambiguous as to what that final together line means, but not too ambiguous that players can't tease out that double meaning from the dialogue. Ghost and Soap have been shown in the Modern Warfare 2 and 3 reboots to have good synergy as a team. Every scene emphasizes their bond, from Ghost being the only one who can call Soap Johnny, to Soap and Ghost's friendship upgrading to fist bumping, to Ghost being the one who specifically picks Johnny for the Oligarch mission. Since Modern Warfare 2, these two characters have been shown to work well together and be unstoppable when they do. Plot tension around who's going to die is also sustained longer with Soap and Ghost as the final duo. We've seen them come out of tough spots alive together, and Ghost has even saved Soap's life in the Modern Warfare 2 countdown mission, and even in the Alone mission when Soap reaches the church courtyard. Players are more likely to be led to believe that Price could be the one on the chopping block at this point, since the Modern Warfare 3 campaign has built up perhaps foreshadowing around his death, and he is also one of the cast members who did not die technically in the original trilogy, so he could be the first to go this time around. On top of that, Ghost is also a popular character who's outlived his original Modern Warfare 2 expiration date, so it would be especially in the back of players' minds that the writers could take him out, especially if we're comfortable sitting in his POV. When Price and Soap are made to be the final duo, there are too many stakes put into Price and Makarov being mortal enemies, and that Price is going to slowly keep losing his marbles as he continues to hunt this man down. Soap and Price in the No Russian flashback are clearly pitted together against Makarov, but Price has a little bit more of a strong narrative thread that will lead him into the next game, where he will have to face more of the fallout of his own inaction. And when Soap put that gun to Makarov's head, it was over for him, and we all already knew it. And most importantly, Soap dies under Price's watch in the original Modern Warfare 3. Players already know at this point what is going to happen. There's no foreshadowing, it's just telling. and it's not very engaging to play through the final mission when you are just waiting for Soap to exit stage left. The writers and narrative director built in a structural narrative weakness in the Modern Warfare 3 campaign by having a direct parallel to Soap's death in the original Modern Warfare 3. They're just asking for these two death scenes to be compared, and of course the original is going to hit harder because it was built up to be that way, whereas the Modern Warfare 3 reboot has completely different stakes and dynamics set up. In the original Modern Warfare, the build-up to Soap's death is grounded in the close father-son-like relationship between Price and Soap. In the reboot Modern Warfare, the 141 has completely new dynamics. It's not Price and Soap anymore, it's Ghost and Soap. And the writers were cooking that all up in the second game, and then they didn't serve it. And it's like they were trying to play catch-up with Price and Soap's dynamic when they didn't need to. We know the 141 are close and have distinct relationships with each other, but it's clear that Modern Warfare 2019 established the close bond between Gaz and Price, and Modern Warfare 2 2022 established that same type of close bond between Ghost and Soap specifically. Suffice to say, I really think that some narrative building and characterization opportunities were missed by not having Ghost and Soap be the final duo. Now we get to suggestion 2. Experiment with Soap dying slowly versus immediately. For these next two alternate scenes, players could be in either Ghost or Soap's POV. Ghost POV is marked by the black line, and the condition for Soap giving instructions before being shot is met in this scene choreo. Soap is unable to speak, but we have a live character who can react to Ghost when he says the together line. And then we can have Soap die in frame in a more intimate manner than just having his final shot be some cold, detached scene. The narrative closure in Ghost POV is similar to the last alternate scene when Soap still dies immediately, but we get a little bit more pathos when we have a player lens focused on a dying Soap rather than an already dead Soap. Feel free to pause and review the screenplay form of that dialogue and what it would mean for Ghost to affirm his bond and friendship with Soap in his dying moments, but still keep it ambiguous so it's not too cheesy. Now if we're in Soap's POV, I went with him dying slowly for the most affect. His POV branch is marked by the green line, and this scene choreo would meet the condition that Soap has not given the wire-cutting instructions, and players must have their final gameplay prompt be, save Ghost. Now doesn't that sound sentimental? And wait for it, also a parallel to the reboot Modern Warfare 2 ending where Ghost saves Soap from being pushed out of a building by Hassan, except now it's Soap saving Ghost from Makarov, but unfortunately with fatal consequences. Plus, this demonstrates Soap's character has no longer remained stagnant and has changed since his first appearance, which provides more closure on his death. From Modern Warfare 2, we've seen Soap throwing himself into the fire and then needing his team to cover for him and especially for Ghost to save him. Now he finally takes on the role of protector as a sergeant, and we get a glimpse of what he could have been as a captain, even though he won't actually be able to become that. Just look at all those narrative threads coming together. That's a character arc. Soap doesn't need to actually become a captain or stick around longer for his character to be finished and cinched tightly for the reboot's narrative purposes. Now we have another possible yet different kind of closure for Soap's character if we're in his POV. And if the writing team really wants a parallel to the original trilogy, this choreo is a little callback to when Roach dies alongside Ghost in the original Modern Warfare 2, except now it's Soap and Ghost actually survives to live with the aftermath. Plus, Ghost is now liable in Modern Warfare 4 to feel some type of way about Price, like when he low-key criticized Price for letting Makarov live at the time. Then we can also have Soap be the one to say the together line as shown in the screenplay variation. The player lens will be on Ghost now looking down at Soap as he bleeds out, and there's a different kind of emotional weight to Soap having to force out the contradictory together line, since there won't be any more future together, while also acknowledging at least he gets to die together with Ghost and the rest of the 141. And we still get the ambiguous clarification of the together wire cutting instructions, and Ghost gets to repeat after Soap, echoing him when it's usually been Soap the sergeant echoing his LT. And then you can have all the little variations of whether Soap is responsive or not, whether he dies in frame or not, and all those little details can be shifted around, and each combination will have their own specific nuances, but overall will hit the same narrative pressure points of an important character death. I would have trusted Neil Ellis and Samuel Roykin to deliver a stellar performance if they had been called to do so. Samuel Roykin served up those two Johnny lines, and that's how I knew there was more in the kitchen that would still stay true to the reboot characterization and dynamic of Soap and Ghost. The point of all this speculation is that even minor tweaks could have colored more of the circumstances surrounding Soap's death. Now, it wouldn't have addressed all of the other complaints that players seem to have of the campaign, but at least it would have lightened some of the load by giving perhaps a bit more care to Reboot Soap's character. I can speculate why the narrative director and the writers chose the path they did. I understand it. It's formulaic and it makes sense. Brian Bloom and the rest of the writing team are not inexperienced writers. They know what they're doing. Price has been set up to feel responsible for his sergeant's death by not killing Makarov when he could have. Players get that, but we already have that for the whole campaign without Price needing to be there. If anything, Price would feel more guilty for being absent for his own sergeant's death, and he would be thinking of how he could have prevented it even more. These other paths also make sense and are formulaic, and they add more juicy narrative goodness. Nothing is lost by choosing any combination of these alternate scene choreos and POVs, even ones I didn't specifically go over. It's just these small missed opportunities that, when added together, could add a stronger sense of satisfaction and narrative closure. And better yet, these alternatives don't sacrifice the writer's original goals and intentions if they don't want them to. We can even still have Makarov's "never bury your enemies alive, Captain" dialogue in the no Russian flashback scene if the narrative director really needed that to be driven home there. Maybe a player could have even switched characters mid-mission, like we saw in Modern Warfare 2's Ghost Team mission. If Soap and Price really must be the final duo, then maybe we can switch to Ghost right before Soap's death. Cue all of the alternate scene choreos that I have gone over. We have had 2 reboot games that focus on how war is hell and the mission has priority even when things go awry. I think by the 3rd game, you can focus on the thing that's going awry while the mission continues in the background. I think you've earned that at this point. These alternate scenes account for this in the dialogue, albeit a bit roughly. If anything, now it all weaves together to be more complex and emotional, while further characterizing the 1-4-1. Ghost is shown to be the most human we've seen him so far, even though he's compartmentalizing. Price is prioritizing the mission, but is still forced to engage with his dying sergeant and surviving lieutenant, and Gaz is now taking on more of a leadership role, but still relegates himself to a back seat when push comes to shove. Imagine being Price and needing to pull instructions from Ghost or Soap on how to defuse the bomb. Imagine being Ghost and having to give instructions to Price while you're there with your dead or dying teammate. Imagine being Ghost having to pull instructions from Soap. And imagine being Soap having to give instructions as you are dying. But no, in the original scene, you're Price who gets to focus on the mission and use it as too much of a distraction from Soap's death. It makes sense in theory and kind of in practice, but for a player 3 games into the reboot and 2 games in with Soap, the execution unfortunately falls a little flat and clashes too much tone-wise with the stakes built up so far. And notice how none of the alternative scenes suggest changing character reactions and adding more grandeur to Soap's death. Soap can still die from 2 basic bullets, and Price doesn't need to be there yelling, "No, no, no, Soap!" It's minor tweaks, that's it. Soap can still die, and it can be just a bit more satisfying and hold more connection to the previous reboot installments and also more weight for future installments. I would hope the writers had exhausted all of their options. I don't know what was going on behind the scenes. All I know is I feel there were stronger options available for Soap's death, with different scene choreography choices rather than major game development changes. In the end, try to give some grace to the writers. Game writing is not an easy thing to do under time and resource constraints. And I'm sure we're all aware that circumstances are not hot and are even less hot right now for game development and the industry in general. Kudos to Neil Ellis for his rendition of Soap and taking the direction given to him and bringing the character to life in his own way. It's unfortunate we won't get to see more of him in future campaigns, given how that funeral scene really drove home that he is not pulling an Alex or a Graves on us. But we still have the reboot Modern Warfare 2 and 3 to look fondly on for his performance. Well, I'm gonna end it here. Thank you so much for watching. I'd love to know what you think about the Modern Warfare 3 campaign and what I've had to say about it. Please like, comment, subscribe if that appeals to you. If you want to hear more about the Modern Warfare 3 campaign or the reboot, please let me know that also down below. Otherwise, take care and keep an eye out for Abysmal writing. Bye bye!